Hey, good to be here. Hey, just the other night, I tried to go to bed, but then I saw it. There was a big, hairy spider on the wall just above me. So I silently got out of bed, got a shoe, and I went to hit the spider, and I went bang against the wall, but I missed. And the spider slid down the wall and went under my bed. And I'm thinking, oh, that is the worst thing that could have happened. Underneath me now is a big hairy spider. But the spider's probably thinking the same thing. Hey, oh no, above me is a big hairy human. But there was no peace that night. We did not get any sleep. And maybe that's how 2023 feels like to us. There is no peace. Because in this year we've had wars, we've had politics, and we've had inflation. And maybe also on the inside, we've found no peace. We're restless, we're tired, we're searching. And if you're like me, you're thinking, oh, it's Christmas. How is it Christmas already? How has 12 months gone by so quickly? How is it 1 year? How is it that 1 year has gone by, but I still haven't cleaned out the study? How has 1 year gone by, but we still haven't had the neighbors over for a barbecue? How has 1 year gone by, but we still haven't exercised like we promised? So 1 year has gone by. We're 1 year older, but we're not 1 year wiser. We're still the same person on the inside that we've always been. So our question for today is this then. Well, how can we find the peace that we're looking for? And because it's Christmas and because this is a Christian in-house group we're having, we're going to look at the Christian tradition and the tradition of Christmas and wonder if Christmas can give us the peace that we're looking for. And we all know the story of Christmas, where 2,000 years ago, God sent us his son Jesus, and Jesus was one of us, a human. He became our species of life on this planet. And of course, we know he didn't stay a baby. He grew up to be a man. And if you listen to my talks, you know that every year I love to go through the internet and try to find a picture of what I think Jesus would look like if he was here today. But earlier this year, I gave a talk at a church, and a man at the church came up to me afterwards and he said, stop going through the internet to look for pictures of what you think Jesus would look like if he was here today. And I said, why not? And he said, because if Jesus was here today, he would look like me. A short, tanned, nondescript Middle Eastern male. So from now on, I'm using this guy's picture to say, hey, this is what Jesus would look like if he was here today. But the Bible also sort of hints that Jesus wasn't that good looking. So I think this guy is way too good looking to be Jesus. But then how can Jesus give us the peace we're looking for? So that's a question we're going to look at today. How can Christmas give me the peace that I'm looking for? So g'day, once again, my name is Sam Chan. Thanks for having me. We will try to answer this question in the next 20 minutes, followed by question and answer from you guys. So as I'm talking, try to think of whatever question you would like to ask me, and I'll do my best to answer it. So how can Christmas give me the peace that I'm looking for? Here I want to suggest three things. Number one, you know what? There is no peace. Let's set the bar very low. There is no peace right now. Now, this is a picture of my wife and her family, and because all Asians do look the same, this is a picture of my wife. Now, when we first started dating was so easy. We had so much in common. Dating is like this. You like coffee? I like coffee. You like movies? I like movies. You like pizza? I like pizza. We have so much in common. But then you get married and you find out you've got nothing in common. Marriage is like this. We fight over which way to hang the toilet roll. We fight over how to stack the cutlery in the dishwasher. We fight over how to hang a t-shirt on the laundry. Should it be upside down, right way up, doubled over? Why do we fight? Because there is no rule book. See, in cricket, at least there's a rule book, but there's no rule book on how to do the toilet roll. In maths, we have absolute, objective, transcendent reference points, but there is no ruler for how to stack a dishwasher. And in sports, we have umpires to tell us what to do, but there is no umpire on how to hang the laundry. And that's why there is no peace. But think about it. If there's no God in this universe, well, then there's no umpire. And that's why we fight. And so when Russia invades Ukraine and Russia says, this is my land, and Ukraine says, this is my land, who's right? Who's wrong? Because if there's no God, then really we're no different from the animals. And this is what animals do all the time. Birds fight. They say, this is my chip. The other bird says, no, this is my chip. But what if there is a God? And that's what Christmas says. There is a God. He loves us. He's personal. He made us. And 2,000 years ago, when he sent us his son, Jesus, he sent Jesus to be our umpire. And that's why there can be peace. Look at this promise in the Bible from a book called Isaiah, talking about what will happen when Jesus comes to us as a child. For to us a child is born, to us a child is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign. He'll set up a kingdom, you see. He'll reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness. When God sends us his son Jesus, he basically sends us Jesus to be our rule book, to be our absolute, transcendent, objective reference point, and to be the umpire of this universe. And that's why there can be peace. But the second thing I want to say is this. We ourselves need peace. It's not just that the world needs peace, we ourselves need peace. Now, when my wife and I lived in Chicago, we lived in this apartment that was right next to the fire department. And that meant whenever anyone in the apartment burnt their toast, boom, the fire brigade would turn up within 1 minute. And we all knew it was a false alarm, but it was a lot of fun. The Americans, they love to do overkill. The fire brigade would turn up in their helmets, their oxygen tanks with their hoses, and they would come charging in. And we all knew there was no fire. It was just a bit of fun. But one day, my wife and I, we must have burned the cooking because we set the alarm off and boom, the fire brigade turned up in our living room. And I actually played rugby with most of the guys in the fire brigade, so they thought it was a lot of fun. They come charging in and they say, Sam, what have you done? And then after a while they left because we all thought it was a joke. But then after they had left, I went into the kitchen and I said to my wife, hey, look at the ceiling. There's soot, there's ash everywhere. There really was a fire in our kitchen. We had started heating up the oil, walked away and forgot about it, and boom, there really was a fire. See, we always think of fire, it's a false alarm. There is no fire. Or if there is a fire, it's someone else's problem. And we do the same with this world. We think the problem is out there, but we never think that the problem might be in here. And so we think the problem's out there. The problem is Putin, or the problem's the left, or the problem's the right. But what if we ourselves are the problem? This is Alexander Solzhenitsyn, famous Russian writer, Russian activist, and he was sent away into the gulags, into a concentration camp where horrible stuff happens. The guards are horrible people, and prisoners die from cold, from starvation, and from beatings. And so Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, it was easy to think that the problem was out there. The guards were the bad people. But Alexander Solzhenitsyn, in his Gulag Diaries, famously writes, well, hang on, what if the problem's not out there with the guards? What if we ourselves have the same problem? And this is Alexander Solzhenitsyn's famous line, famous sentence, famous quote. The line separating good and evil passes not between classes, not between political parties, left versus right, but it passes right through each and every human heart. The problem is in here. See, the world is the sum of its parts, and we are the parts who make up this world. And so if the world is broken, that's because we ourselves are broken. And if we're honest, if we're humble, we too realize, you know what, inside all of us, inside me, is sin, guilt, brokenness, shame, there's pain, there's hurt, there's regret, there are secrets, there are skeletons. And that's why God sends us his son Jesus, not just as a symbol of love, but as someone who will actually save us by becoming one of us. And this is what the Bible promises. An angel appeared to Joseph and said this: Mary will give birth to a son, and you're to give him the name Jesus. Why? Because he will save his people from their sins. When Jesus comes to us and becomes one of us, he saves us so that we can have a new start. We can be healed, restored, forgiven, washed, cleansed, and begin a brand new start where we're no longer broken, but we're restored people, where there's no more sin, guilt, or shame. Instead, there's forgiveness, healing, and restoration. The third thing I want to say then is this: Jesus is our peace. Now, it's Christmas. We've got to buy presents. If you're like me, you still haven't got a present for your friends and family. Every year, as a married person, I've got this problem. What do I get my wife for Christmas? A few years ago, I got her this. It's a Dyson V11 vacuum cleaner. My friends rave about it. Back then, it was the top of the range vacuum cleaner, top of the line. I gave it to my wife. Oh, she hated it. But I said, it's the top of the line vacuum cleaner. It's a Dyson V11. So another year, I gave her this. It's a Trader Joe's shopping bag. Not just one, not just two, but 3 Trader Joe's shopping bags. Ah, she hated those. So then I tried this the other year. A Williams-Sonoma cast iron fry pan. She hated this. It's gone back in its box. We have not used it for a year. But I'm saying, hey, this is Williams-Sonoma. This is the best fry pan there is. But last year, I finally got it right. Last year, I gave my wife this. It's a robot vacuum cleaner. Oh, she hated it, but for only about a month. And then she started using it. Now she loves it. She uses it every day. She needed it, but didn't know. She wanted it, but didn't know. It filled a hole in her. It completed her. So what is it that we need, but we don't know? What is it that we want, but we just don't know? What will complete us? What is missing in our life? What is the vacuum that we all have? And we try to fill this hole with work. Or maybe we fill this hole with stuff. Or maybe we fill this hole with trying to gain success. But happiness experts like Arthur C. Brooks, who writes for The Atlantic, he has a podcast, he's published books, he'll say, you know what, these things won't fill the hole. They'll just only make you more tired, more stressed, more anxious. So what is it that we need? Well, what is it that a child needs? Well, child psychologists say children simply need 3 things. They need to know they're seen, they need to know they're loved, and they need to know they're safe. And I think we never outgrow this need. We too, as grown-ups, need to be seen, loved, and to know we're safe. We've just finished watching the Netflix special on Beckham, David Beckham, and there's this amazing moment in Beckham when Beckham is playing for Manchester United in the European Champions final versus Bayern Munich, and they're in front of 100,000 people, a crowd of 100,000, and the game's about to begin. And Beckham and his teammates, they say they're just doing one thing. They're looking in the crowd, trying to see if they can see their dad. And they said, you know, it's ridiculous. We're 23-year-olds. We're professional football players. We do this for a living. But even now, we just want to know if our dad can see us. And once we know our dad is watching, we know things are going to be okay. And I think we too need to know we're seen, loved, and safe. And that's why God sends us Jesus. Because in Jesus, God is saying, hey, I see you, I love you, and I will save you so you are safe. And that's the promise of Christmas. Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host, the angels, appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth, peace to those on whom God's favor rests. The promise is this: in Jesus, God's favor shines upon us. So the opposite of shame is face. And the Bible's promise is God will show his face to us and his favor rests upon us. That's how we find peace. A narrow definition of peace is to say peace is negatively the absence of war or conflict. But a richer, fuller definition of peace is to say peace is positively the presence of something else. It's the presence of God's favor. It's his face shining upon you. We once had a life of shame, pain, hurt, and regret, but now we have God's face shining upon us. We're fulfilled. And the Greeks had a word for this, eudaimonia. The Hebrews have a word for this, shalom. It's peace. We will be filled, fulfilled, having God's favor shining upon us. Well, do you remember our original question? It was this: how can Christmas give me the peace I'm looking for? And today I've said three things. Number one, you know what? This world has no peace, but God sends us Jesus to be the umpire so there can be peace. But secondly, we ourselves have no peace. The problem's not just out there. The problem begins in here. And number three, Jesus is our peace, because in Jesus we're seen, we're loved, and we know we're safe in God. Now, my wife and I raised three young boys, and so we've read a lot of these books by Steve Biddulph. We've been to a lot of his seminars, and Steve Biddulph is a child psychologist, speaker, author, and I went to a lot of his seminars, and Steve Biddulph loves to share this example, this illustration in his seminars. He said, if we want to have healthy, functional, peaceful relationships with our children, with our friends, with our family, we actually have to have a peaceful, healthy, functional relationship with our earthly parents. Because until we do, we bring all that baggage into our other relationships. And Steve Biddulph gives this example. He says, in a room full of 100 men, and because he was talking about raising boys, about fathers raising boys, he gives this example. In a room full of 100 Australian men, 1/3 have not talked to their dad in decades. In a room full of 100 Aussie men, 1/3 do talk, but it ends badly. Something is said, words are spoken, someone storms out. In a room full of 100 Aussie men, Steve Biddulph says 1/3 do talk, but they say, hey, I have a good relationship with my dad. We catch up once a week for dinner. But Steve Biddulph says that's not a warm, functional, healthy relationship. That's duty. We must catch up every week for dinner. Steve Biddulph says in a room full of 100 Aussie men, only 1 out of 100 can say they do have a warm, functional, peaceful relationship with their earthly dad. But Steve Biddulph says this generation finally gets it. We have to get things right. So all across Australia right now, Australian men are doing this. They're picking up the phone and they're calling home. And the dad will pick up and say, son, is that you? And the son will say, yes, dad, it's me. And the dad will say, do you want to talk to your mother? And the son goes, no, I want to talk to you. We need to make things right. We need to have peace in our relationship. And I think Steve Biddulph's right. And if he's right, how much more do we now need peace with our Heavenly Father? And that's why God sends us Jesus on the original Christmas day 2,000 years ago, so we can have peace with God. And if we can have peace with God, then we can have peace in here within ourselves. We can stop searching, stop being restless, stop being tired, and we can have peace with those around us. Because in Jesus, we know that we're seen by God, loved by God, and we're saved by God.